Upstream Health Leadership Award is a co-production of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Minnesota Foundation, looking beyond healthcare today for ideas that create healthier communities tomorrow, and TPT's Minnesota channel. This program was recorded on November 13, 2006 in Bloomington, Minnesota.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Mark Banks. I'm CEO of Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Minnesota. Actually, I have the privilege to chair the Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Minnesota Foundation as well. And I am really so pleased that you're here today. I think this has been just a great morning, a really important discussion about social determinants of health. I hope you've enjoyed the morning as much as I have. I think this has been just a spectacular beginning to this conference. I imagine the afternoon will be even better. So. You know, as a physician, I really believe in the importance of prevention, of trying to get upstream to do the work that we need to do. And I think we've gotten just a huge insight into both the areas we should do that work and how significant the work is to be done. So I think there's nothing at this point that's probably more important than starting to look for examples of how people have actually been out there doing that kind of work. And I think we actually have today the opportunity to honor somebody who has actually been doing work upstream for some period of time already. I think it's fitting that the inaugural Upstream Health Leadership Award is being presented to Winona LaDuke in the White Earth Land Recovery Project. The foundation created this award to recognize and further the work of an individual and community who've shown outstanding leadership in addressing health in a holistic way, really upstream at the source of that health. And Winona LaDuke has demonstrated significant leadership on health and as a community leader and founder of the White Earth Land Recovery Project. In her words, Ms. LaDuke is described as a social doctor, and I can't think of a better phrase than that, frankly. I think we should all aspire to be social doctors as we go forward. Looking beyond the individual to the broader social influences on our community's health. And in addition, the White Earth people have sought solutions to those community issues. So what I'd like to do now is share with you just a brief video that's going to introduce Winona LaDuke and the work that she's done in her community. And then following that, we'll ask her to step up for the presentation.
You can always deal with symptoms, whether it's diabetes or alcoholism or incarceration rates or poverty rates. But until you deal with the structural elements, you're not going to be able to really have a redress over the long term for sustainability and vitality in a community. So that's why we started the White Earth Land Recovery Project. The White Earth Land Recovery Project started as a way for our community to get back some control over our land base. We tried a lot of legal recourse and legislative work. We decided we'll try to buy back our land and then grow food on our land to restore our traditional economy and strengthen our traditional way of life. We have about 1,700 acres of land. We're the largest reservation-based nonprofit in Minnesota and one of the largest nationally. The best way to be healthy is this Minobamata, which means the good life. It is a way of life which says that you know where your food comes from and you are part of the harvesting and relationship to that food and the caring for your ecosystem. And I've seen other communities come to us.
This here stuff here is what we call sweetgrass. It's used as a medicine and in ceremony. It'll be able to stay here year after year, and it'll be here available for elders who need to come in and who are looking for it.
We have education programs that work with a lot of other programs in the tribe for youth leadership development.
There are some of our greenhouses that are going to be put up. Those will be put up here soon after harvest is finished.
Because we need to cultivate the next generation of people who's going to take care of our community, and they need to be Anishinaabe. You know, I don't want to say the studies indicate, but that's the reality, is that these kids are viewed as high-risk youth. The best answer to avert being high risk is this self-confidence and knowledge as to who you are.
Be blessed. My daughter was on the Ojibwe Knowledge Bowl.
More children understand where their food comes from, you know, whether it is corn or whether it is wild rice or whether it is maple syrup.
This is a cooler.
I've seen a rise in the number of producers.
And we We've got honey over here. This is how we get the syrup from the farm. This is our tea, just raspberry leaves. This is strawberry leaves. Comes from the garden.
200 families that have gardens, you know, and we plow out a heck of a lot of those gardens for them. Young people involved and interested in things like renewable energy, because they see that this is the wave of the future. Renewable energy is incredibly patriotic. The reality is that if you want to have homeland security, you should be looking at renewable energy, because the fact is that we could grow or produce everything here. You don't need to invade anybody.
I'm with the Minimedium program, and Minimedium means good food, and it's all for the elders, the diabetic elders on the White Earth Reservation. I deliver to about 8 communities here on White Earth, and they get wild rice, buffalo, hominy, maple syrup, and jam made with honey. Sometimes we have squash, other things that's good for the people. And they really appreciate what they're getting.
Native people in general are pretty conservative. We have a teaching which says that in each deliberation we should consider the impact upon the 7th generation from now. That would be conservative thinking. We aren't talking about this fiscal year, you know, we aren't talking about the bottom line and our corporate profits this quarter. We're saying, what's it going to mean 7 generations from now? What's our energy economy? What's our economy going to look like 7 generations from now? That's conservative thinking. And I think that that is very patriotic. You know, I have a good life, and the Creator gave me a certain set of responsibilities, and I have a great amount of privilege in my life. This is a good life I have here. How could I take care of it? Having our project recognized by, you know, an organization like Blue Cross is an amazing thing for our community, because, you know, in our case, the more that the mainstream, Blue Cross is kind of mainstream, you know, and a mainstream organization like Blue Cross says that what these Native people are doing is something that we recognize as part of a bigger picture, something that is going to help, you know, the larger non-Indian, Norwegian, Lutheran farming community and our own community kind of reaffirm, kind of pat us on the back and say, yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll think about eating different. Or maybe I'll put in that garden, you know, or maybe instead of, you know, watching reality TV, I'll engage in reality, you know. But we are immensely resilient. We have this wellspring upon which we draw, which is quite a strong well. What we're doing, your ancestors are happy, you know, and those ones who didn't arrive yet, that haven't come yet, they're counting on you.
Yes, please, yeah. Well, it's my pleasure on behalf of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Foundation to present this year's Upstream Health Leadership Award to Winona LaDuke and the White Earth Land Recovery Project in recognition of really the outstanding work at the Wellspring of Community Health. And just to let you know, as part of this award, the foundation is also granting a $15,000 grant to help further your important work. So, congratulations.
Beautiful.
Yeah, good.
That's very beautiful there. Thank you. Thank you very much, Blue Cross, and all of you who came down here today, for the honor of being here with you. You know, it's a big thing for our community to be recognized in this way. You know, I never saw that video before. I really liked it. They did a really nice job. I was a little nervous. I was watching it, but you know, it is a big thing for our community, because we're kind of geographically isolated. You know, northwestern Minnesota, kind of between Bemidji and Fargo. I don't know if you know. That's where we are, and you know, we do the best we can up there. We have this little motto, which is, you know, pray hard and work hard, and it seems to do pretty good. But you know, we've been around for since 1989 now, so pretty long for a Native grassroots reservation-based organization, or for any organization kind of that's working on a whole bunch of issues. But having your recognition and from kind of the bigger picture of Minnesota is a very important thing for our community. I want to have Leah Prusha from my staff. Can you just give the wave there? And, she came down with me, and she's my deputy director. She helps me take care of all the things in my organization. It's because we're kind of getting big, and we have a lot of responsibilities. So we are, as you talk about kind of the wellspring or the beginning, we are at the headwaters of the Mississippi River. I don't know if you know this, but the Mississippi River starts on our reservation and in our territory, and so does the Red River. We have the headwaters of both is in our community, and so I think it's always been something that we recognize, because in our bigger picture of what we're trying to do, those two mighty river systems, they start up there, and so we try to take good care of them. That's a little bit of our thinking. So as I thought about what to talk about with you here today, I think that each of us as individuals and us as collectively as a community, we're interested in the process of becoming healthy. And recovering ourselves is how I look at it. Recovering who it is we're intended to be, and realizing the potential of us as human beings, which requires a health, which is spiritual, which is physical, which is emotional, which is in psychological, or in the larger society. And that is, it turns out, a lot of the work of our organization, and the work that is necessary for our community, because you cannot really have one facet and kind of hang on to that one without having the others be nurtured as well. And that is, really our approach in this. From our, where we sit in our community, you look at the statistics and we don't look good. We're the poorest counties up in Minnesota, and, everything you don't want to have, we have. We have, unemployment, 50, 60% unemployment on the reservation. You got diabetes, about 40% of the adults over 40. If you're an Indian youth between about 18 and 25, you better be in the military, because otherwise you'll probably be in jail if you're a young man. Indian arrest rates are about 7 times that of non-Indians. We got a lot of challenges, in our community. And, but, as we look at how to address that, the reality is that you cannot just put a program in. There's not a program that's going to fix something. I don't really know how else to say it. It's like, there's no more, you got to really look at the structural issues of how you could make a community healthy in order to address all of the elements of that. Because those circumstances are historic circumstances that we live in today, and the result of those circumstances is hard on our community, but the process of getting well has to involve really, looking at all elements of that. So in our work, I would say let us, to begin with spiritual health and that practice and how we do that. Our community of Anishinaabe people, we are tied to our land. That land was reserved for us under a treaty in 1867 because it is a good land, because all of the medicines that are known to the Ojibwe exist on that reservation, because it is the headwaters of the Mississippi and the Red River, and because it is a sacred and spiritual place to us as Anishinaabe people. Over the time, of the past while, we lost a lot of our essence spiritually, and it is still there, but it was weakened, So that is why our work to strengthen and preserve and restore language is a critical part of our spiritual health, because that is how we hold our ceremonies, is in our language. That is how we acknowledge our part of creation. That is how we acknowledge our relatives, is in our language. And that is how we become full human beings. Our work, we have this, you look at an organization and people look at some of our projects and they're like, how did that project happen? And I know that a lot of you direct nonprofits, or you're familiar, and they, it just seems like crazy, like, what are they doing with that, But one of our projects we have is this sturgeon restoration project, right? Now, where would that be? You know what I mean? What are those Ojibways doing up there with that sturgeon thing? But what happened is that we have a sturgeon clan in one of our dodames is sturgeon on our reservation, and Margaret Smith, our elder, who's was pictured there, she's sturgeon clan. And our sturgeon's one of our most sacred fish, kind of like the buffalo of the Ojibwe. Well, they're pretty much wiped out around 1920 in Minnesota for greed and overfishing and dams, and you know what happened. And so what happens to a people when they lose their relative? If you see what I'm saying, there's this loss which occurs when something that you can have songs for, that you have, as a relative, is no longer present, and it's unquantifiable. In terms of like, what does that mean, And so, about 6 years ago, the LaDuke family went to Canada. There's a lot of stories that begin like that, but the LaDuke family went to Canada, and we went to see these guys at the Rainy River Reserve up there, which is right by International Falls. And they have a sturgeon hatchery, which is the largest sturgeon hatchery in Canada and the only native-run sturgeon hatchery. And I think it might be the largest sturgeon hatchery in North America. And they take fish out of the Rainy River who are the same fish that we have. In our ecosystem, you follow me on this, it's not like a different variety. And they're up there and they take the fish out and they have fish babies and then they put the fish back in the river, And so it's a wild population that's maintained, and they don't, they don't kill that population. Anyway, so I was just transfixed. I took my kids up there, and my kids were little guys then, like 10 and 12. I took them up there to look at this, and we was just amazed. And I came back, and I asked them, I said, can we have some of those fish? And they said, yeah, come back. So I came back about a week later because I was like all excited. And I brought 2 Coleman coolers in my Aerostar van. And I got this bubbly thing that hooked up to my car lighter. And I got 4 sturgeon. I think it was 5 actually, 4 or 5 sturgeon. And I put them in those Coleman coolers. And I said, so what do I say when I hit customs? And they say, oh, just say they're your pets. So there my family was with our 4 or 5 sturgeon coming back across the border. And we go and we put them in our lake, And so then Randy Zortman, our tribal fish biologist, feels like this when he sees me, which is what he does a lot of times when he sees me. It's like, Winona. It's like, he's trying to explain something about the law. And I was like, Randy. Anyway, our tribe, since that time, has put about 20,000 fish a year into our lakes. And we just had our first big celebration this year with Rainy River, brought down all its elders and our tribal council and all the guys for U.S. Fish and Wildlife who had been a little bit worried about those laws at the time were there, and DNR were there. And, so now we have the largest sturgeon restoration program in Minnesota, one of the largest nationally, And so, what does that have to do? But that is the essence of like how, it's our spirit. And you see them coming back, and, they aren't a game fish, they aren't economical, they aren't, but they're part of us, So that's one of the things that, we're able to do in our work on our spiritual health. It is, all these elements, but that is foundational because through that, then we're able to kind of build our strength in our community. We work a lot on environmental health issues. I spent a lot of time, and actually Leah Fouché is here too. I spent a lot of time working with her, and I know you guys have supported some of their work at, fighting, got mercury in my lake, and it comes from coal-fired power plants and incinerators, and I probably gonna spend the rest of my life fighting new coal, but we also have another idea. Our idea is that our tribe should put up wind, It turns out, go figure how this worked out, but Indian reservations are the windiest place in the country. I don't know how that happened, but we are really, really windy, and my reservation is the windiest reservation in Minnesota, So it's one of those things, like, you're going to be a country that consumes more power than anybody else, so you better come up with a plan. You know what I'm saying? So we're thinking wind, So we start on that for our community because what that does is that means that you can get your power without destroying your lakes, and you can, in that process, protect your environment. And in that process, I'll tell you, like this whole thing, how we work, it does involve this psychological and this cultural element, which is to say that, oppressed people, which is what Native people are. We have this history of being oppressed and this history of being treated kind of badly. You learn to be treated as second-class citizens, it turns out. You get to a certain generation and you get used to having environmental injustices imposed on you. You get used to not being waited on in restaurants in northern Minnesota. You get used to people telling you that you're going to have to wait in line or whatever. you know? And it is something which is a tragedy, and it is a national tragedy, and it affects other oppressed peoples as well. But what we found is that in our work, a lot of our work is about kind of like saying, let's give this a try. You know, we'll try to do something. So a few years ago, we put up that wind turbine you saw there, you know, and everybody was like, oh, that's not going to happen. You know, and you know, I am not the most coordinated or handy. I'm totally not handy, as a matter of fact. You know, we didn't want to be the joke of how many Ojibways does it take to put up a wind turbine, or you know, it's like 75. You know, we should try to get it done. But our guys are really handy, you know, and these Indian men that know how to fix a car with a couple of screwdrivers and you know, some duct tape, or it turns out can put up a wind turbine. I mean, not to, but we put up that one wind turbine. And, you know, this thing occurred right after we did that. I call it wind turbine envy. That is to say that, you know, other people, you know, who didn't really think they could do that, now almost every tribe in northern Minnesota wants a wind turbine. And these farmers who never talked to us came over and said, how'd you do that? And we said, well, we know some guys hadn't know how to do that. And so we're trying to build a whole project out of that. But I'm telling you that because that's like a psychological thing, which is at some point you kind of give yourself permission to believe that change is possible. And that is a very important thing for emotional and spiritual and psychological and social change in a community, is to believe that you can make a difference, you know, and that it's not someone doing it for you. It's not someone telling you what to do. It's not that you're gonna, you know, have a hard time again. It's saying, we're not gonna be a victim, and we're gonna take charge, you know. So we have this big initiative. We're growing it, and you know, we this year, this amazing thing happened is we bought the school in Callaway, Minnesota, which was a miracle in itself. You know, and I know you don't need a lecture on what happens to rural schools and that we shouldn't close them all down, you know, because that's what's happening. And I opposed that. But then they closed it down, and then they put it up for sale, and the Detroit Lake School Board was, it kind of took a lot of work to get them to sell it to us. You know, they were like worried what we're going to do. The Indians are going to get the school. I was like, get over it, you know. So that's where that food processing facility is, you see. So we can get USDA certified now because we're no longer in our kitchen, you know, if you follow what I'm saying. So we're now building this capacity, which never in our imagination did we think we would have grown from what we were, you know, like in a farmhouse 4 years ago to having this school now that we bought, and we have giant freezers and fridges, and we can now produce food that we can sell to our tribal school lunch programs, which is what we're after. You know, we can you know, process local farmers' food and build a local food economy. Never did we think we'd get that far, you know, but that's what happens is that you start this, and then this, like, it grows. And I know I've seen it in my own community. I've seen our elderlies believe that change is possible, and I've seen it in my youth. When I went out ricing this year and I bought rice, you know, what I will tell you was an amazing thing is that I bought a lot of rice, and that rice comes in off a lake, and 2 Indians in a canoe and some sticks get it, and it's a beautiful thing, rice in Minnesota, wild rice. And as I was buying rice, I looked out there, and it's all young men selling us wild rice. They were like 18 to 30. And why I say that is so significant is that is the highest risk group in the state of Minnesota for just about everything, you know? And there they were, and they were all ricing. And I asked some other people, like, who riced on their reservations, and they said, oh, elderlies. I said, well, White Earth. And White Earth, these young, they believe, you know? They earn some money really from ricing. They earn some money for being valued as Anishinaabe people, which is, you know, fundamental to our work and what we're about, you know. And I'm really proud of, you know, our organization and, you know, our community and what we've done in this time. And we got a lot ahead of us. You know, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we're trying to keep our wild rice from getting genetically engineered. We think the word wild should mean something. And we think that genetic engineering of wild rice in Minnesota would be a big problem because you can't control it. So we're going back to the legislature this year. But that is what happens when you're a little group in northwestern Minnesota. Sometimes you got to do big things, you know. And we didn't maybe set out for that, but That's what happened. And, we really want to thank you for acknowledging us in this process, because that whole process is this, spiritual, emotional, community. And in the end, it is also very physical. Because if you rice, you got to be kind of fit to rice, it turns out, or else you're going to be really sore. And if you eat those traditional foods that we grow, and that we harvest, it turns out that our corn has 43% of your fiber needs, a recommended daily allowance of fibers in our hominy corn, and 23 different kinds of amino acids in our beans, and that the medicine for diabetes is traditional foods, And so in the end, there is this absolute physical set of implications from being re-traditionalizing, and recovering your values and your culture. And it's not something that is archaic or put on a shelf that, we just refer to as an interesting thing that Ojibways once did. It turns out, to be honest, that those teachings are really teachings about sustainability, and I think probably have something to help others too, But, we're really thankful for you all and the work that a lot of you do in your communities, and also for the recognition you've given us today by this award. And our community just really wants to thank you for it. Miigwech.
Upstream Health Leadership Award is a co-production of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Minnesota Foundation, looking beyond healthcare today for ideas that create healthier communities tomorrow, and TPT's Minnesota channel. This program was recorded on November 13, 2006 in Bloomington, Minnesota.